We are here. Timer out. What up, what up, what up? We are live right now. The input is about to get dropped. The theme song, baby. Ooh. We are squeezing up in here. We are very close. Wow. Chris is not in this at all. Can we move a little bit more that way, David?
Yep.
Cool.
Oh, that's covering your face. Do you care? I can try to get out the way. Your face is literally entirely covered.
Yeah, I can't. It's up to you. Tell me. Is it easy to fix?
No, remember live or not anyway. I mean, it is easy to fix, but it'll take like 5 minutes. I can try to get it out the way. Fuck.
Can you put it at the bottom?
No, it's still this overlay. Fuck.
Could you put it to the left?
No. Someone move closer to me. I can try it back a little bit.
All right, cool.
All right, there we
Perfect.
are. 3, 2. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the EG Pop Thunder with your boy, the young light skin Keith Sweat. Back, well, first time you're seeing them on the podcast with my guys, Crypto City Pod. To my right, my guy Chris.
I'm to your left.
No, viewers right.
Nice to meet you.
Viewers right. Yeah, speak as the viewers on this. And to my left, my guy Max.
What's going on, everyone?
And all the way to the left, my guy, my cousin David D, Completo 21, back and joining me to help host this podcast to talk about crypto. This is an emergency podcast. I was in Miami, and I was actually going to the Heat game when this was happening. And it was no longer the FTX arena. It was the blank arena because they don't have a sponsor no more. On topic is when Max hit me up and was like, bro, F you, I need to come back in the pod and we need to do an emergency podcast right now because something major just happened with crypto. And I don't know what happened. I just know that no longer sponsored by the FTX. So, and I didn't even know they were crypto, if I'm being completely honest. I never knew what that was. So the FTX is why you hit me up, correct?
That is correct. Just about 10 days ago.
Yeah.
FTX was a huge exchange, especially here in the U.S. SBF is the CEO's name. His name is Sam Bankman-Fried. He basically scammed a lot of people's assets using their funds to fund other things. There's some controversy that he used the funds to lobby for the Democratic Party during the midterms. Just this past month, he bought penthouses in the Bahamas and basically just scammed a lot of our consumer funds and consumer assets. So it was a huge debacle that the media coverage the past 2 weeks, and the crypto market has been tanking since. And like you said, FTX was sponsoring the arena. Tom Brady was involved. Steph Curry was involved. There's a lot of people involved with this. So this has been one of the biggest collapses. I'm not sure if people are familiar with Enron and what has happened with the Lehman Brothers back in the 2008 financial crisis. But these were big black swan events that happened in the market where companies belly up and they're not solvent anymore, and they file bankruptcy, banks Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and it was just huge, and that's why I hit you up, honestly, because this was a big talking point in the market.
Yeah, I mean, last time we were here, we had So Prosperous on. That would be coming out at some point. And you were teaching us, and I had a friend here as well. She was off camera, and she said that she learned a lot that podcast. And Dave is just like how me and Jerry were. He doesn't know much about crypto. So hearing that, David, what's your thoughts when you hear stuff like that? Are you like, is that scare you away from getting into crypto even more?
It makes me think about what's in it for the long run, right? Like I think it kind of makes it seem like you have to really know what company you're working with when dealing with crypto. And if you're not very educated on that topic, or if you don't have that education, it's like, how do I make sure that I'm not making an investment that's going to screw me over in the long run?
So hearing that, Crypto City Pod. What's your rebuttal to that?
Honestly, valid point. You're pretty accurate. You need to, in any form of investing, right? You need to do DYOR, which is do your own research. That's definitely something we want to, say right here, right now, while this live stream is going on. This is not financial advice. We empower everyone to educate themselves and do their own research and do their own due diligence when investing your own funds into any project. It could be stocks, bonds, but here we're talking about crypto, right? And also, happy Thanksgiving to everyone listening in, to all our American audience as well as Latino Thanksgiving.
For sure.
Pernil.
But to answer your question, getting back to the topic, you're correct. You just need to focus on and discipline yourself on to know what you're investing into. And when it comes to crypto, don't think of it as companies. They're more like projects. And Chris could correct me here, but would you consider them like companies? I mean, they are companies, but
So they're in between companies and something more like gold. Gold can't go bankrupt. The S&P 500 can't go bankrupt, but Apple can go bankrupt if they manage their funds properly. The biggest thing with the FTX thing is it's not Bitcoin. It's not cryptocurrency. It is a bank that deals with cryptocurrencies that was doing something completely illegal. He was taking money that was, whether it was institutions or people, and taking that money and directly using it for whatever he wanted. It came out that him and his parents bought hundreds of millions of dollars worth of houses in the Bahamas. He gave $50 million to the DNC. They used it to gamble in the market and think, with their own token, the FTX token, whether it was going to go up or down. So they did a lot of illegal things. So it's more like Enron than anything. But
So for layman terms, for people like may not understand, because sometimes people get lost in these type of discussions. So basically, that's like a CEO of Bank of America, Citizens Bank, dealing with people who are investing their money, hard cash, and then just take everyone's money and then spending it.
think about it like this. You went to the bank. You just got $1,000 check from your job. You deposit into the bank. Your bank account on your phone is showing you that you have, let's say, $20,000. Cool. Well, the $20,000 isn't actually there. It's in someone else's account. And all of a sudden, on the snap of a finger one day, he just walked away. And you now don't have anything left.
But the way the media frames it, because on the outside looking in, I'm not sure if David would agree to this. Mm-hmm. On the outside looking in, it seems like crypto went bankrupt opposed to FTX. And like when you see that, you're like, oh my God, stay away from crypto then. Yeah. That'll basically be saying like, oh, well, stay away from money because the owner of Bank of America took my money.
So that's the narrative that they want to put out. There was actually some senators that came out yesterday and said, oh, they were actually trying to get Fidelity to stop issuing Bitcoin to their clients and their customers. And that's one of the narratives that they're trying to push forward, is that, hey, this is Bitcoin that failed. But no, it's not Bitcoin that failed. FTX was no different than Robinhood, than Lehman Brothers and Enron. They're just a company that was managed poorly and actually did things illegal. And one of the things that's really frustrating as an industry, being in the industry, is that he still hasn't been arrested. Like he was taking tens of billions of dollars from institutions, from people, from hedge funds, from pension funds, and he's still doing what he wants to do. And you have someone like Bernie Madoff that stole tens of millions of dollars, $100 million, whatever it was. He got 150 years in jail, and he was arrested basically, on spot. And so how is it that SBF can now live? It's been over 2 weeks and he's still not in prison. So I don't know what's going on with the U.S. government, but it's very
shady business.
Very shady. That's what's going on.
Yeah.
But no, to very simple point, this has absolutely, ironically, nothing to do with what Bitcoin is and what it stands for. And over this podcast, we'll, hope to be able to show you how, if anything, this should make you want to own Bitcoin and want to self-custody your own Bitcoin so that this doesn't happen. Because this isn't the first time in our industry that this has happened. This is too many handfuls of times, and it's actually really frustrating. So I've been in the space for about 5 years, and this has happened God knows how many times, and it's just how many times you have to see the same story over and over and over again before people are like, you know what, we're done with this, we're going to change.
Do you think this is one of the biggest times this happened in the crypto world?
So this is, in my opinion, is the second largest time. The largest time, in my opinion, is Mt. Gox. You might see this called MTGOX, the Magic the Gathering Online Exchange. Back in 2013, it basically had like 70% of all Bitcoin trading, and the founder, someone got caught with like the Silk Road, and basically overnight they shut it down. So there was really nowhere to get Bitcoin. And I mean, FTX is probably about 15 to 20% of the total market right now. So there's a huge difference. Binance actually represents about 60, 70%. So if that goes under, that might be more like 2013, but this is bad. It's definitely a bad look. It's definitely leaves a bad taste in a lot of senators' mouths, especially on the Democratic side, because they're the ones that took $50 million from this fraudster, and now they have to answer the American people.
Yeah. So David, we're gonna start off with you. We're gonna turn you around. Well, Max and Chris are gonna turn you around, but you're saying that kind of steers you off. When you see that on the news article recently, is that what you're thinking? Like,
It made me real, like, because it's true what you guys are saying about the articles, because a lot of it is like that I'm seeing on Google. It's cryptocurrencies, or it's like a bad look, or like cryptocurrencies are going down, and now you're explaining it that way, and it's like, well, they just changed the narrative to push what they wanted to push.
Yeah.
And people are going to believe that because they're like, oh, no, why wouldn't I believe a reputable news source? Well, because the news source is probably not even reputable at that point.
yeah, they're probably getting paid off. Who knows what direction they're going in.
They probably got money from SBF himself.
Yep.
I mean, there's a chart that was put out in how much money he had actually invested in inside and outside projects. He had stake in Robinhood. He had stake in Sequoia Capital. These are all traditional entities that don't really have much crypto relation at all, and God knows who else he gave money to.
Yeah, just so we can end off on this topic of FTX. How do they have a $1 billion loan they hasn't paid off yet? So how was the Heat organization or the owner of the arena getting paid? I know they're trying to go after him now. And they're trying to rebuke their funds.
The guy that did the bankruptcy for Enron actually said he's doing the bankruptcy for FTX now. He said this is 1,000,000 times worse than the fraud at Enron happened. He was like, there was no accounting done whatsoever. There was nothing. So he was like, this was a joke. Like, and it's amazing how most institutions do their due diligence when they want to invest in a company. But if you are a multi-billionaire, or you're one of the most trusted companies in the space, and you don't really do your due diligence that much, then another institution is going to come in and be like, well, I'm assuming they did their due diligence, so I'm not going to have to do my due diligence. So if it's cool with them, it's cool with me. And then, slow down the line. And so that's a large part of what happened. But he was basically just directly taking people's money and giving it to somebody else. It's that simple.
That's crazy. So it sounds like a big Ponzi scheme in the grand scheme of things.
Pretty much.
Honestly, it was a big Ponzi scheme at the end of it all. It was again, it's a huge scandal. But going back to your thought before we move on from FTX about the media saying that cryptocurrency is broken. Honestly, Vitalik, he's a famous character in the market, in the industry. He's the creator, co-founder of Ethereum. It's the second largest digital asset in the market. That technology is different from Bitcoin, but those two assets are the two largest in market cap. But long story short, Vitalik always says that the technology is sound. It's the characters that conduct business around it that are flawed. Like SBF, the CEO of FTX. There was a few collapses this past year, like Terra Luna. We could run down a list of like companies that have shown insolvency and they went bankrupt this past year alone in 2022. So the narrative has definitely been, especially as we come near to the end of the year with December approaching, there's always going to be like, the wrap up of 2022. The wrap up of 2022, it seems like, stay away from crypto. It's bad for you. It's bad investment. But again, hopefully in this podcast and just in general, we encourage people to just learn about the technology that's behind it all.
For sure. So getting back so we started off right off the jump of why you guys wanted to come on the podcast. For those tuning in or who's going to tune in after the fact, to start off basically, for those who don't know, like the me and the Daves of the world, how would you explain crypto to the average person walking the street who doesn't know, who's scared to put their money in and invest?
So first off, the first thing I would say is what Bitcoin is and what cryptocurrency are completely different things. And the most important one in the space is Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is not what people think it is. And if the most important thing to learn about Bitcoin is to kind of forget everything you thought you've learned and just start from scratch. So when people think of Bitcoin, they just think of money on the internet. And while that's part of it, that's not the whole point of it. The biggest point of Bitcoin is a decentralized platform that allows for anyone to interact with the space without any intermediary being able to say, no, you can't do this. And so you can transact with Bitcoin and send messages. You can send Bitcoin to other people. They don't care what race you are, what nationality you are. Like, it doesn't matter if you're even human, to be completely honest. And so the initiative behind Bitcoin is to have your own custody of your own decentralization be able to transfer value. And so I compare Bitcoin to gold. It's mostly digital gold. So if you think about the properties of what gold is, then that is essentially kind of what Bitcoin is, but it's also a lot more because it's also the platform part of it. Something like Ethereum is more like a shopping mall where it has those properties of Bitcoin, but at the same time, it allows for the building and development of other projects on the platform itself. So if you think about like the Province Place Mall, we're all in Rhode Island. The number, and you compare that to like something like the Warwick Mall, the more big businesses going to that mall, the more people shopping at that mall, the more valuable it's going to be. And so there's a lot of comparables to Ethereum, but if you just think about platforms like that as just shopping malls, it makes things a lot easier to understand.
So a shopping mall essentially with different products. So because you said it's a shopping mall, but is it like the more products that are available, the more powerful that like is?
So think about, it's not necessarily products, it's more about different businesses being built. That's the biggest thing. So you have a lot of different projects that are building on top of Ethereum. Just like in the mall, you have lots of different companies. Like you have Nike, you have Adidas, you have CVS, you have all different companies and products doing different things. And so that's essentially kind of what it's like on Ethereum in order to bring it to a real world comparison.
Okay.
So he uses the shopping mall as the analogy. I think of Ethereum as it's a blockchain. What people don't like, if you don't know what blockchain is a distributed ledger. Think of like if anybody has used Google Sheets before, it's like a shared Excel sheet that holds transactions, that hold records, that's open source, meaning that anybody publicly can at any point go in and check who spent what transaction has happened. One cool thing that I used to do in grad school was we used to do like case studies, and one of the case studies was like, imagine being a landlord and you had a tenant, and when it's the first of the month, it's all backed by a blockchain. Like, and let's use Ethereum for this example. On the first of the month, if there's a smart contract, that's the technology that it uses in blockchain. If it says you owe me $1,000 to live in my apartment, if you don't pay me by August 1st, the doors lock. Obviously, you would need your house to be smart housed and like be like online and connect to the internet. But think of it like that, where everything is just smart contract proof, meaning that one condition has to be met for the other condition to happen. So it's an if-then thing. So imagine if you're the landlord in the Bahamas or in DR or whatever, and you're like, I'm going to get paid on the 1st. You know, there's a lot of like landlord-tenant issues, for example, that, you know, they don't pay you for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. What if your house locks on them if they don't pay you? That's the type of technology that it brings efficiency, scalability, and just security in your own funds, you know? So that's one of the examples that I like to use.
And
Ethereum.
One more thing, the important thing about Bitcoin and Ethereum is the decentralization aspect. So using these types of cryptocurrencies to spend your money is no different than using a credit card. They do the exact same checks that Bank of America does, or MasterCard or Visa, whoever it may be. It's just that the people that are validating these transactions are not one entity, and not one single entity can say, hey, we're not going to let this transaction go through because, you know, you decided to go to a different country and they think it's fraud when it's really not. Or if the government said you did something and you didn't, and they want to stop that transaction. No one can stop transactions on Bitcoin or Ethereum. They happen as long as you have enough funds in your wallet.
But yeah, I didn't ask this last time. So say, can they freeze your assets?
No. As long as it's held in your own custody of wallets, and Max brought something that we can show later. As long as you have your own money and custody your own money, they can't tell you can't spend it. Now they can try to put a block on it and say, hey, you know, these exchanges shouldn't accept this, any transactions that come from this wallet, but they can't actually prevent you from spending your money. It's impossible.
And like I was mentioning last time, but I'll say here as well, is back when the Ukrainian war was happening in the beginning, back in like, you know, January, February, the first quarter of the year, a lot of sanctions were happening between Russia, between Ukraine. People couldn't access their bank accounts. So what had happened was a lot of money got flooded into the Ukraine through Bitcoin addresses and Bitcoin wallets. Obviously, ultimately helping the Ukraine war, like the Ukrainian soldiers, like fight this war. Again, there was no central authority, no central entity that was like stopping them. So this was all decentralized. And all you had to do was know their Bitcoin address, and you could send them Bitcoin. I have family in Colombia, and I have a cool anecdote. Was my cousin needed money. Again, we're in the 21st century, 2022. I know how to use Bitcoin. I told him to download Binance, which is the largest central exchange in the world. He gave me his Bitcoin address. I had my Bitcoin address. I sent him $100 in Bitcoin. He got it within like no less than a minute. And there was no bank involved. There was no, paperwork. There was no Western Union. There was nothing like it used to be in the back in the day when you do cross-border payments. So, again, the power of Bitcoin and the technology behind it, it has real-world utility. And that's something that I personally love to look at, is like the utility behind it and where it could take our future. Because I definitely think that crypto and Bitcoin can definitely bring more in a more equitable finance future. Y'all are fidgeting over here.
You're trying to plug the cord in. I'm trying to bring you guys up before the computer went to bed. He was about to unplug the camera.
Jesus.
I was trying to fix the ledger at the same time so Chris doesn't have to bend over for this live stream.
But yeah, just long story short, I just think that the technology has a lot of real world utility, and there's a lot of companies, a lot of countries, and ironically, the unbanked world is are interested in this. And when I say unbanked world, I mean, I come from a Latino background, and we come from the margin, like the minority group, if you will, or the demographic, as you may say. But there's countries like El Salvador that I love to talk about, because it's a country that made, it's controversial, but the president is more of a millennial. He changed the laws and regulations where Bitcoin is now legal tender, meaning that if I want to purchase this water bottle on the streets of El Salvador, I can pay in Bitcoin and it will be a valid transaction in the country.
So is that not a thing in the United States? I can't go to... Is there any place you can go to, like Walmart, Walgreens?
So there is. It's just you have to use different third-party software. So unless the company directly accepts Bitcoin itself, then you have to use a third party, like I forget what it's called, but you can have your credit cards or debit cards and put your crypto on it. Now, for me, that we'll get into another time, but it's a little different. It's using a third party custody. What Max is talking about is actually using straight up Bitcoin on the Lightning Network. So that in something that a lot of people don't understand either is when he made it legal tender in El Salvador, they're a dollarized society, meaning they have to use dollar bills. They don't have their own currency. He didn't say dollars were illegal. All he said was Bitcoin is also legal. So if you never want to use Bitcoin, your life doesn't have to change. And so there's a lot of people thinking that he's completely switching the system and saying you can only use Bitcoin. No, it's, we'll give you the infrastructure to accept Bitcoin. And if you don't want to accept Bitcoin, you can easily just accept the Bitcoin and convert it to dollars right away, and we'll give you the dollars.
So you're saying he's giving the infrastructure. So he's giving these, the bodegas and stuff like that, the capability to accept the software for it.
And you want to know the brilliance of it? Everyone has a smartphone. That's all you need for the infrastructure.
But
that's
funny fact is it's only like 40% or 50% of, less than 50% of the El Salvadorian population own a cell phone. If you really think about it, it's one of the poorest countries in Latin America. But it has been increasing because there's an interest to learn about Bitcoin. And then the government, Bukele and his administration, are funding and incentivizing programs to get a cell phone, educational courses to teach about Bitcoin. And just this past year alone, because it's been a full year where this legal tender law went into place, their GDP has grown, tourism has grown, just a lot more economic growth and economic vitality is happening in one of the smallest countries in Latin America. So Bitcoin, and it's I love watching it because this is like a pilot project for the whole world. The whole world is watching, where it's like there's the senator of Mexico saying that they might pass Bitcoin as legal tender. Department of Congo in Africa, Nigeria. There's all these places that, again, if you listen to the countries I'm mentioning, these are countries that rely on the U.S. dollar, and we could get into this really quick. The U.S. dollar is dying, as we all know. The inflation is at an all-time high. We mentioned it in the last podcast here, but about 80% of all the all the USD in the world was printed in the last 12 years, right? Well, since 2008. If you really just like understand economics, supply and demand, and just the basics of economics and inflation, there's so much cash in the world that our value of our dollar is dying. And this is where Bitcoin becomes a hedge. It's deflationary. And you might ask why. It's because it's scarce. There's only 21 million Bitcoin ever going to be mined. But that touches on attributes of just money in general.
Just so, what's the purpose for El Salvador to do that? So, like, how is that benefiting them as a country?
So here's the way the world works with in terms of dollars. Every country has their own currency. Over time, if their citizens lose value in their currency, they have to go to something that their citizens hold trust in. That's essentially all fiat currency is. The only reason we use dollars today is because we trust that the dollar will be roughly worth $1 tomorrow. Every country around the world has to print their own money, and when they print more money, it loses its value compared to the US dollar. But when the US government prints dollars, it doesn't really have the same effect around the world because you still have to pay for everything in dollars. A lot of debt is based in dollars. So these countries are having their economic solvency essentially held in check by the U.S. government. And from that standpoint, it makes no sense. If you own your own country, who am I to tell you how valuable your currency is? And so in that aspect, by going to something that you can't create more of, like Bitcoin or gold or silver, you're now taking that power out of third party's hands.
So even like right now with inflation, so we just keep printing more and more money.
Yep, that we just keep printing more.
And you're saying that with Bitcoin, what Max just said was there's a max. So there's only 21,000 ever made.
21 million.
21 million ever made. So
right now there's about 19.5 million that have been have been mined, and by the year 2140, it's on a downward sloping creation model, minting model. And so this will be a problem long after we're dead, unless technology allows us to stay alive a lot longer. But it's not something that anyone can create more of. It's not anyone can make it create faster, because the way it works is you have a technology that's open source. And if someone wants to change that open source code, and you have now created what's called a fork, where their entire past has a similar transaction history, but going forward, if us four are a ecosystem together and you want to pay Max 2 Bitcoin, but your wallet only says 1 Bitcoin, how would it benefit me that you get to create the extra Bitcoin out of thin air? So if you want to create your own Bitcoin, e-Bitcoin, let's call it, then that's a whole different unit of measurement, because Max and I and Dave are just going to look at that and be like, no, that's not what we're using. And so that's completely different. We're not going to accept that.
yeah, and you said that no one can ever just make their own, or say they have multiple Bitcoins that they don't have because of the blockchain, where you can resource that. You can double check and make sure they're not lying. And they can't lie about having multiple Bitcoins that they don't have, because that blockchain prevents that, correct?
Yeah. So basically Bitcoin is just an open ledger. So think of that spreadsheet that Max was talking about earlier. If I want to trade with Max and he wants to sell me his water bottle for, let's say, half a Bitcoin, you and Dave also have to update your spreadsheets and say, hey, Chris just gave Max a half a Bitcoin for his water bottle. So then we're all in agreement that we all have the same balance. And then if you want to interact with me and I want to sell you the water bottle that I just sold Max for, let's say, a half Bitcoin or whatever, I need to go buy something else. Now all of us have to update the ledger again and say, hey, that half Bitcoin that Chris gave to Max, Now Chris got a half Bitcoin from Evie, and then that just continues and goes on and on, and those are called blocks in the Bitcoin blockchain.
David, you got any questions? I feel like you're quiet over here.
Yeah.
Yo, are you processing
I'm
this all?
processing everything. Two things, like a couple things. For example, like if that everyone needs to have the same balance in that spreadsheet. How do you reduce?
Well, it's not that everyone has the same balance. It's everyone knows each other's balance. My balance could be 0 and yours could be 50.
Okay, so how do you wouldn't there be like a margin of error potentially, or
No.
is it just because of the technology it's so structured in such a way?
In order to continue with the next block, all the validators on the network, I'm trying to use simple words because it can get very technical. All the validators, the ones who own the ledgers, and which is essentially everybody, they have to be in agreement that these transactions are valid, and the person who discovered the next block is the transactions in that block are valid, and we're going to continue with that.
Is there an example of something where it would not be valid and there would be an agreement to not come to an agreement, I guess?
Yes. So if, for example, in that same instance where I tried to sell you that water bottle that I bought from Max for a half Bitcoin, you tried to give me a half Bitcoin and you don't have a half Bitcoin in your wallet, Max and David are just going to be like, no, we're not going to validate this transaction.
And who's like, so you're, say, I'm assuming you guys have Bitcoin. How are you guys viewing those transactions to make sure they're right? Are you guys actually doing it, or your software is doing it for you?
Software is doing it for you, but the brilliance of Bitcoin is everything's open source. So I actually run a light node at my house, which basically just looks at every single transaction that goes on and just make sure that the whole network is properly mining transactions and making sure that everything's valid. And thousands and tens of thousands and millions of people around the world are doing the same thing. And at the same time, if anyone catches anything wrong, then you have the ability to say that this transaction's fake.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, Chris is a lot more technical and he likes the Lightning node. But to your point, the software does the work for you. If you were just to, like, again, we were in El Salvador or Colombia, wherever, even in the US, if I was selling you this water bottle for, again, half a Bitcoin, there's apps that I literally just use your QR code, it pulls up your address, I request it, or you just pay me half a Bitcoin, I receive it, and it's right here in my wallet. It's just
like a Venmo.
It's just like using a credit
Cash
card.
App. It's the same thing. It's just, honestly, put it in layman's terms, Bitcoin is just digital money. I say that with like a grain of salt because there's a lot more value proposition to Bitcoin than just that it's digital money. And then there's also the thought, like, hey, the price of Bitcoin. The price of Bitcoin right now is $16K. Literally last year was at $69K. Obviously, you see that disparity in price and you say, wait, what the hell's going on? Is this even a valuable asset to own? But again, if you understand the technology behind Bitcoin and actually know what Bitcoin is trying to solve, you don't care about the price. You really don't. I'd buy $100 worth of Bitcoin when it's at 100K, or right now at 16K. It doesn't matter for me because I understand what I want to use Bitcoin for. I don't care about capital gains.
Bitcoin is trying to do, it works whether it's $1, $100, $1 million, $100,000. All it does is allow users to exchange value through the internet without a single third-party intermediary that can refuse this transaction from happening.
Questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So, since it's a form of digital currency, let's say you want to access that digital currency to make a purchase, like a home, right? A home's not, you can't buy a home with crypto yet. So, like, what do you do in that? Like, how do you access those funds? And is it a lengthy process, or like, what does that look like?
So, honestly, it's funny. I think sometime in 2021, the first ever home was purchased with, I think, Ethereum, not Bitcoin. But there are companies out there that are trying to build out like projects and softwares where you can buy big assets like that. And that's the future. At the end of the day, I always ask people one simple question: are we becoming more digitalized or not? Right? Like, everybody could argue that we're running at a very exponential rate. Like our iPhones are getting better, computers are getting better. Like we're just getting more digital. If that's the case, money sooner or later is gonna get digital.
Yeah.
Like let's be honest.
So are you looking at people like me and David, like we do at our parents, like, oh my God, you guys are so old school.
Yeah. No, not at all. Because honestly, we're at the best point of this market, or just honestly, I know everybody says it, but like we're living at the best time of what a time to be alive, right?
Yeah,
like,
100%.
Less than 5% of the world is invested in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies.
And I just think, there's, again, once you start understanding the technology, the utility is just insane. And I just think it creates like an equitable finance, like a future for everyone. Like there's such an unbanked world. I keep using the word unbanked, but I just think of people in Nigeria, people like in Argentina that are just living between the margins. Like, what if we were able to interact with them? What if I can like send the message to someone directly? And here's another real world case study that I like to use. Starbucks, you get coffee. There was a QR code. As you guys know how business works, supply chain, right? Starbucks sells you the coffee, but the coffee farmer that was out in Colombia or Brazil that you got the coffee bean from, they get chump change on the actual like price of that transaction, right? As you know, like they get skimmed
pennies.
out. They get pennies. So what if there was a QR code on that Starbucks cup? And what if I was being generous and I wanted to give a financial incentive? Like, yo, I really love this coffee. I want to support this business. I want to support this farmer in Colombia. Honestly, there's a QR code. I could just, use our cameras like we use. I pull up his Bitcoin address, let's call it, and I send them like $10 worth of Bitcoin. That literally eliminates all those supply chains, screws Starbucks over, screws the importers, whatever. It goes straight to the direct supplier.
But do you think Starbucks would really allow that without getting
They don't have a choice.
of that?
No,
If it's on their product, though.
No, I
they
agree
would
with you.
need to-
It's going to take some time because just the way business is. You're right. Why would Starbucks allow us, when I say us, like whoever is generous enough to like strengthen their supplier? But what I see, and maybe I just have a utilitarian outlook and like I just think very optimistically on humans and what we do and what we can do as a race. Like imagine if we were just all connected and with globalization, we were just all connected and we're just able to like pay and help people from all over the world. But I digress.
isn't that what Facebook tries to be and all these things try to be? We can. I could talk to someone in Africa if I wanted to, or New Zealand or Australia, name the country.
So it's funny, just to cut you off real quick.
How would you pay money? Like if you made a friend, a pen pal in Nigeria, and the guy's like, you trust him, whatever, and he needs $100 US. Right now, how would you send them $100 US? How would you?
Right now, I'm like, oh, do you have Venmo or Western Union or?
But that's the problem outside of America.
Nigeria doesn't have Venmo.
It's a process.
It's a U.S. company, right? So Western Union, right? You use what you know.
I threw a Western Union out there because this is one of those top ones you just go to. It's like you trust them.
For cross-border payments, I agree with you. Western Union has been around for ages, since we were born, right? But that's what I'm saying. Bitcoin is a competitor to Western Union because it just eliminates Western Unions taking that fee, the transaction fee, that 2-day wait, the whole like, oh, we need to know who's the receiver, if they're legal.
The 16-digit code you need to
everything.
But just we don't get lost.
Talks about too is that's
don't get lost on David's point though. Like, how would you buy a house? Though? I'm so curious on that. You didn't answer that part of it.
I'm so sorry. I went on.
Yeah. Before we got to the new topic, I just want to make sure we end that one off first.
I mean, it just depends on.
Anyone can download an application on their phone and they can have Bitcoin sent to it with literally 30 seconds of doing it. There's no person you need to talk to. There's no software you really, really need to download. You can just download an app on your phone.
The thing is,
write down the 12 words and you're good.
With houses, the deeds, right? The deeds to the house are usually real estate is connected to the government. Let's be honest, right? It's called real estate in Spanish and Latin. It's like royalty. Like real estate is the biggest asset you can own, one of the best assets you can own. Because it's still connected to government, I don't think Bitcoin and Ethereum you can't purchase it with that until the government changes its laws and say, hey, this deed is connected on the blockchain. You can purchase it using blockchain assets and digital currencies. But at the moment, it's hard to. Like if you own this house, right, and you say, like, hey, Max, I'll sell you this house for 2 Bitcoin. And I'm like, bet, send me your address, I send you 2 Bitcoins. It's a transaction and a trust between you and I. But the government would still see you as the owner of the deed.
Gotcha. Yeah, but then you said that was one person who just did buy a house with?
So
Yeah.
so I'm a realtor.
I was just gonna
And
get to that.
the way that they actually did it was, in order to sell your house, you have to own the house outright. You can't have a loan on the house. And then you have to send the amount of the cryptocurrency to the third party, which is a lawyer. And at the time of the sale, that has to be locked in for the price of the US dollar, regardless if it goes up or down at a certain point. And then the seller has to be willing to accept that price at that certain time and be willing to go forward with the deal like that. So it's a little, it's in my opinion, it's more just for show at this point.
Gotcha.
Just like people who say that they get paid in Bitcoin, it's really no different than you getting paid in US dollars and taking a quarter of it or $100 and saying, hey, I'll just go out and buy Bitcoin. It's essentially, 6 of one, half dozen of another. It's the same thing.
Gotcha. That's okay. So I think you can convince me and David. I'm not sure if David's coming along to the Bitcoin sign yet, or if you have to convince him a little bit more. But we are, we're the younger generation. How are you convincing someone of the older generation to get to that? I think that will almost scare someone. Oh, so I can't buy a house. You want me to invest in Bitcoin, but then if I want to buy a house, I can't even buy a house.
So I mean, how many older people do you see that use brand new technologies?
I mean, everybody does. I mean, from the wall. How old are we talking here? Like my parents do, but they don't know they don't understand it, but they try.
I mean, my grandmother just got an iPad like 5 years ago. Warren Buffett just got an iPhone like 4 years ago or something like that. So, I mean, there's a certain cutoff where it's like people that are a certain age are really never going to catch up with the technology, and they kind of get left behind. And to be completely honest with you, I don't think everybody should own Bitcoin. I don't think everybody should spend money into Bitcoin. It's not worth it for a lot of people. But I do think that everybody should try to learn about it and try to understand what it is and what it isn't. That's more important. And so the biggest value proposition for Bitcoin is the inflation. So I actually brought with me a couple things. This is a US dollar. And this is a US dollar from 1890. It is a silver coin, and today it's worth about $27. This dollar was created in 2003. And now for everyone who is old enough to remember, in 2000, 2005, whatever, when we were in elementary school, middle school,
Sierra was popping.
Tom Brady was still
step.
young. No, I'm playing.
Yeah, so popping.
You could go to school and you could get breakfast, lunch with $1.50. Now, what does $1 buy you? Absolutely nothing. So this is given by the U.S. government, U.S. government to its citizens. This is silver, and this is worth 27 times what this is. So how does that logically make sense when this is 140 years old?
They're not making them anymore.
Because it's silver, it's actually valuable, because they can't create more of it. They can't just draw on the drop of a dime, say, hey, we're going to create another 100 million silver coins today without, if you don't have silver, you can't create more of it. And so in the past 18 months specifically, but also the past 15 years, like Max has said, since 2008, they've created, for lack of a better term, a shit ton of dollars. And that's why inflation is what it is today. And so if you think about it, what's the only difference between these two things? The government can create more of this. They can't create more of this.
They can't control. So it takes control out of the government. That's why the government doesn't support it.
And that's why they've changed the economics behind what is backing this dollar bill over the past 140 years. So originally there was an ounce of gold for every $20 in the bank, because 1 ounce of gold was $20 worth, and it held like that.
It was a 1-to-1 proof of reserve.
Yep. And then after World War II, they had the Bretton Woods system, changed it to, for every $50, there's going to be $20 backed. Then the U.S. government, because no one kept any checks and balances on them, printed way too many dollars that had an existence. And when the Europeans started realizing that, they were starting to ask for their gold back. And when the government realized they couldn't do it in 1971, they completely cut off all ties to the U.S. to gold. And so now today we just have a floating fiat system. And so fiat actually comes from a Latin term which means given value by someone of power, essentially. I don't remember the exact definition, but it's something like that. And so the only reason this holds value is because the government tells us that it holds value.
Because we trust it. Money is just trust, right?
And so in other countries like Argentina and Venezuela and Zimbabwe, they've actually completely lost trust in their currencies. And there was actually a National Geographic photographer one day in Zimbabwe, and the guy was wheeling a whole wheelbarrow full of dollars, of Zimbabwe dollar bills, and they were like $1 trillion bills, like literally said $1 trillion. That's on
great.
them. And the guy dumps the wheelbarrow full of money, and the guy's like, wait, aren't you afraid someone's going to steal your money, your Zimbabwe dollars? And the guy was like, I'm more worried someone would steal my wheelbarrow. And so it's like, that's how useless that currency is, and that's no different than what we have in time.
I wanted to reel it back really quick and to answer your question about how are we getting like the older generation or like to participate and engage in crypto. It's tough because you think about it like this, the older generation, you would think of them as like the boomers, right? The people like this is where they're like starting to reach trough of their life. They're like 70, 80. I don't know the stats, but I'm sure like if you do a survey or even if you know, does your mom or your dad have online banking? Have they set up
Oh my God, don't get me fucking started with this. My dad would call me all the time and they just like, what's the number to Citizens Bank? I'm like, are you kidding me, dude? Google it. It's in the back of your card. So my mom does. She actually does know how to use it. But my dad tries, always fails, always calls me, always gets mad. So yes, those are the two answers for me at least. I don't know about David.
My mom does not like online banking. I've been trying to get her to do online banking for a while, and she's like, "No, I'll check my account at the bank." Or
so that's my point, right?
My grandma goes to the bank. She will not use anything online. She won't even pay bills online.
But so right there, those two stories, right? They just touch upon what people trust. Right, your parents, your grandparents, God bless them. Like they literally go to the bank because it's a central entity where they know they could talk to a teller, something they've been doing for years. They know, like, please tell me what's in my checkings. They trust that their dollars are sitting in that account pretty. Whereas, again, going back to the Bitcoin, you are your own bank. You can become your own bank. What I have right here, which I'll show now, is a crypto wallet. It's a hardware wallet. It's a cold storage wallet. It looks just like a USB. And what it is it's very secure. It has like over 3 pins that I gotta keep. You can hold my money.
oh shit,
I'm rich.
legit.
But it's a Ledger. Ledger is one of the brands that creates these cold storage wallets. And honestly, what it is, that's basically my bank. I go in it, I activate it, I can engage with it, I could do whatever I want with it. I can send money to Chris with it. It's just, there's no teller. I'm my teller. There's no one telling me like how much is in my bank account. I know what's in my bank account. And this touches on a topic that we spoke about last time. It's called Web3.
Web3. W-E-W. Not wet. I thought it was wet 3 the entire time.
WB.
No, it's W.
B. Wait, that's what I say. P?
You said WWW.
Did I?
Yeah.
I'm drunk. Shit. W-E-B.
Yeah, Web3. So Web 1, Web 2, Web 3. We're hitting the generation of Web 3, right? I'm sure maybe you guys heard of it in the past, like since 2020's come out. But basically Web 1, think about like AOL, AIM messaging, right? This was when you were accessing information, accessing data. Web 2 is what we grew up on, right? Facebook, Instagram, when we share our data, where Facebook and Twitter and all these companies have made money off us because we created free content for them. And they put advertisements and whatnot.
You're welcome.
Yeah, YouTube, everything we're doing right now, right? Whereas Web3, it's given us the ability to like have ownership of our own data. This is ownership. What Web3 is, again, ownership of data. This is ownership of my money. And that's a big topic where some people, maybe like your mother, right? Like they just don't want to take ownership and like responsibility. You know what I'm trying to say? Like it's they just rather
Like it's easier to just use the middleman.
It's easier to use the middleman, delegate that work. They don't want to think about it. And it is a learning curve. I'm not saying it's easy. Like I've been on the space for like 3 years and I just got this ledger about a year ago.
Do you have one of these?
I got multiple.
Multiple?
Like,
oh, my guy over here. Guys, if you see us in Vegas this weekend, you know who sponsored us. But, yeah, so, but going back to that, your own stuff, it's your own money, you know, cutting the middleman out. But aren't you a little nervous now? 'Cause I've been seeing and reading before I did this podcast that, you know, banks are trying to get, blanking the word right now. They're trying to, like regulate. Aren't you guys worried about regulations? If they go into Bank America Fidelity, you know, takes Bitcoin in, Ethereum, like aren't you guys worried about regulations? And how about, does that affect you guys? Your thoughts on getting this?
When you say regulations, what exactly do you mean? Because technically speaking, Bitcoin can't be regulated. The
So-
only thing that they can do in terms of Bitcoin and the actual Bitcoin use is to just tax it more if you spend it. But that's really all they can do. They can't prevent people from using it. They can't, just like you can't prevent people from getting on the internet.
So when Fidelity's offering, you said like, so what's Fidelity offering when they have Bitcoin?
The same exact thing FTX is.
Okay, so there's like financial.
This is why I say Bitcoin is completely different than what a lot of the central media and a lot of people think it is, because when you look at something like Fidelity or something like FTX or Binance or Coinbase, all they are is banks. And to be honest, in the Americas, you have to get, I don't want to say Americas, in the US, you have to get every single banking license that you would in order to be a bank, in order to be a crypto bank. And then in addition, you need to get additional licenses and stuff. So it's not really any different than any traditional bank you've used. And that's why I say it's completely separate. And so when you're talking about regulation, those things should be regulated.
So you guys saying cut the middleman out. That's why, it's Bitcoin and crypto is a big thing. Well, obviously the same thing is a big thing. So why would someone go to Fidelity to hold their Bitcoin? Isn't the whole point to cut out the middleman? Why are they bringing them back in?
So some people do, and this is where I was going back to, not everyone should completely own their crypto.
Right? Am I right about that? Like, why would I go to?
You are 100% right. It's the same reason, but it's the same thought process of why would you put your money that you got from your paycheck in the bank too and give someone else custody of it versus holding it in your wallet?
Checkmate me there.
It's something that humans feel comfortable with, and it's not right or wrong. And so some people don't feel comfortable doing that, or some people want exposure to the asset, but don't necessarily want to take the actual custody of it themselves. So actually there's another product on available to people to buy. It's called GBTC. And what it is this company, Grayscale, has bought a crap ton of Bitcoin, and you can buy into this fund that you now own a portion of that Bitcoin, the total number of Bitcoin they own. And now this comes sometimes with a discount where it's worth more than the total Bitcoin in there, or it's worth less, a premium, where it's worth more than the total Bitcoin. It depends on what the market wants it for, but that's a more what I want to call it, watered down version, if you want to call it that.
So question then. So if I have Bitcoin and Fidelity's holding it, at
you don't
that
own
point,
Bitcoin.
I don't. Yeah, so I don't own Bitcoin,
Correct.
and then they could freeze my assets.
Correct.
What the
But
fuck's the point of that? I just
This is why you buy. That's why
if you buy one of these,
no. But what's the point of going to Fidelity at that point? Might as well have cash at
the
that
thing-
point.
so-
No.
So Fidelity and Binance and FTX, the thing that just blew up, their central exchanges. All you're doing is they're taking your dollars, right, or whatever currency you're using, but we're all from the U.S., so USD. I buy $50 worth of Bitcoin on FTX. Well, no longer available, but like Binance or Fidelity. Once you have it in that account, you move it to this bad boy, right? And once you have it in this, think of this as like your wallet, like your actual wallet where no one knows where it is. It's you own it, right? Like Chris was saying, you don't own your keys on the central exchange like Fidelity. So it's not really yours, it's theirs.
so let's take a step back too. So how do you know if you own your Bitcoin or not? So when you log into your bank account, you just put in username and password. That's your action to be able to show that you own ownership of your dollars. To be able to access one of these, you need what's called a seed phrase. A seed phrase is a set of 12 or 24 words that are randomly chosen by the wallet itself.
I'd get locked out.
And
That's the thing.
but so that it gets a little simple. Let me explain it. So you write down those 24 words on a piece of paper, and if you ever physically lose this, or this is damaged and you can't use it again, like you throw it in it gets run over by a car or whatever, you can actually put in those 24 words and put it into another wallet, and you now still have access to your money. So it's not physically connected to this device. You still have access to another place. Now, humans are very good at hiding things. We're not very good at finding things. So
Literally.
what I do to store my keys is I have a security deposit box with a bank, and ironically, I store my Bitcoin security with a bank. But I also have like a safety deposit box that's not at my house, that's in a offsite location, that I store 2 different sets of those 24 words. So if something happens with the bank, it burns down, God forbid, or something happens in the other place where it gets burned down, God forbid, there's always one other place that it is at. And so you never want to take a picture of your keys. You never want to put them on Google Keep. You never want to put them on Apple Notes. You never want to store them in any type of online anything, because if you can see them and they're on your phone, I guarantee you they'll get hacked. I've seen this happen hundreds of times. I've seen people lose millions and billions of dollars the same way.
And once that happens, you're done. There's no like coming back from
There's no you. It's just like if you had $1 million under your mattress and someone lit your house on fire, you're fucked.
Yeah, you're not getting that
And
back.
that's the downside with why a lot of people don't always want to fully custody their Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies themselves. And so now, in my opinion, the best way to kind of do that is whatever your comfort level is, to be able to kind of maybe use both those different systems. So maybe store a little bit with something like Coinbase, and in the future, a lot of different Bitcoin banks or cryptocurrency banks, I'm going to call them, they have what's called proof of reserves to prove that their actual customer reserves are actually there. And so if you have that, that makes that platform a little bit more trustworthy. Now, at the end of the day, if they want to freeze it or they go something like SBF happens again, there's no way to fully protect yourself from that except for owning it yourself. But, it makes it a little bit simpler. So if someone's in that mix of like wanting to learn about new technology but doesn't want to fully get there, they can do that too. And so that's why you would store your money with Coinbase.
Gotcha. I have a question for both of you guys actually. So if if you don't want to answer, you don't have to. But so do you guys solely have your money and Bitcoin like in your wallet right here? Is all your money like in here, or do you have like an actual like Bank of America Citizens accounts? So
I have account with Coinbase, Strike, which is a purely Bitcoin company, and then I have like 98% of my crypto on ledgers.
So you don't have like a bank you could walk up to and pull money out?
No.
You either, Max?
My money is that.
Yeah, I would say.
I have a follow-up question on this.
I would say like 70% of my money is in that bad boy right there, and then I also have like about 30% in like warm wallets. Warm wallets are essentially. Sorry, I'm probably way too far from the mic. Warm wallets are essentially like on a Web3 application, and it just helps you connect from the blockchain to your own account.
Gotcha.
They're
So you're
just
also
always connected to the internet.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So you're also nothing in a Bank of America or anything, walk-up type of
Not
stuff.
really. I mean, Strike is a Bitcoin company that acts as a Bitcoin-ish bank, I guess, if you will. But I have some money there.
So my follow-up question to that is, I don't know if you guys, we recently just met. We haven't partied as much together as we should to. We should be able to coming up soon. My birthday's coming up soon. We'll do some partying there.
Not a cloud.
But point that being is, if you are in a club, say if you're at a gentleman's club, you want to tip these workers here. How are you doing that? How are you buying bottles? How are you buying?
You better have a QR code.
So funny story. I actually read an article a couple months back that the stripper actually did get tattooed her Bitcoin wallet.
That's a hustler. She's hustling. What's the number? We get her on the podcast. But no, but for so like if you're going there, if you're going to these places, how are you? If your money's solely on these, everything you guys just said. What are you guys? How are you guys accessing this?
So to be completely honest with you, I don't spend my crypto. So I view Bitcoin as a reserve asset, as an inflation hedge, in a sense that I know the government's going to print more money over many years. So I need to own assets that they can't print more of. They can't create more of.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying,
this.
just like, how would you? What do you do though when you go
I just
out?
use dollars.
But don't you have? That's what you said. You don't have a bank where you can pull money out of though.
Like, how do you get?
So I don't own. I don't have 100% of my wealth in.
Oh yeah, that
Bitcoin.
was my question. So like, you
Sorry.
have like a bank of America. Or,
sorry, I thought you meant like no. Okay, so
I still get direct
yeah.
deposits.
Like
that's what I was saying. So like,
I have most of my wealth is in crypto.
okay,
And it's been like that for a couple of years. But no, I do have dollars.
oh okay. I thought you were fully everything. You just put all your money
That's what
into
I
crypto.
thought too. I was like, oh shoot.
My bad, I misunderstood your question.
Yeah. So
We're
like,
not
so
there yet. I would say another 10 years, maybe we'll
So the biggest downside for that too, though, is the U.S. government treats every transaction that happens in cryptocurrency as a taxable event. So if I go out and buy something, I have to then pay taxes on the difference in price of Bitcoin from when I bought it to what I just sold it for to get X product. So now
Wait,
if you look-
sorry, I'm not gonna lie. You lost me there. Can you repeat
so
that
let's
again?
say I bought Bitcoin and just to make numbers simple in my head. I bought one Bitcoin at $100,
Okay.
and I go out and I want to get you a drink for your birthday,
Okay.
and so I buy a $10 drink. At that point, the price of Bitcoin is now $200. So now I have to pay that $10 that I bought you. I have to pay taxes because that original portion of the Bitcoin I bought is worth more than it is now. So I have to pay 40% or 30% tax on top of that Bitcoin depending on when I bought it. It could be short-term or long-term capital gains.
Who's taxing you on that?
The U.S. government, the IRS. So that actually increases how much these actual things that I want to buy cost. So it really doesn't make sense in the U.S. to be able to, spend Bitcoin. Now in other countries like in El Salvador and I think Portugal, parts of Portugal do it. There's other Switzerland. Yeah. There's some countries in the world where you don't get taxed, and so whatever you want, you can just go out and spend it, and you're good. And the way I see it is, I think that a happy medium in between both of those is to do what we do with other currencies. So let's say you want to go to, celebrate, instead of celebrate your birthday in province, you want to go celebrate your birthday in Medellin, Colombia. Mm-hmm. And so you fly out and you buy $5,000 worth of pesos. Well, if the peso goes up 10%, and that's only not much, you're looking at like $50 worth. You don't have to pay taxes on that when you come back to the States for the difference in price, because according to the U.S. government, the federal, the IRS, if you've gained any less than like $600 worth of differences in currencies, you don't have to pay the taxes on them. It doesn't make sense. It's not worth you tracking. And so I think that that's a happy medium if the IRS decides to say, hey, for all these cryptocurrencies, if you have less than a $600 gain, then we're just going to say, whatever, it is what it is, ignore it. And I think that that's a happy medium between the government getting their money, because, there's always saying, the only thing they guarantee in life, death, taxes, and change. And so if they're still going to get their money at the end of the day, but that makes it easier for people to use this as a actual medium of exchange.
Gotcha.
If that answers your question.
You got a question, Dave?
I know, but I'm about to pull you in this.
I do have a question in terms of, for example, when you're, for example, Chris, you said you're a realtor. So when you're buying, a home, your client has to submit all their information, like their assets, how much they have in the bank and things like that. Do they include if they have Bitcoin into that process, or is that left out? And does that add value? So
I actually had this discussion with the loan officer. Until the government allows that to be recognized as an asset. So if it's held on Coinbase, yes, you can use that, but they don't like it. But if it's held in your own custody, it's the same exact thing as if you had cash under your wallet, under your mattress. It doesn't exist.
Okay.
So if it's custody by a third party, because...
So that's the only con.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it makes very little sense to me, but the government wants to protect from illegal activities, even though the US dollar is the number one asset in the world used for illegal activities,
right.
Ironically. They've actually done studies on it, and less than 4 or 5% of all Bitcoin transactions are used for illicit purposes.
How would you even do that?
So this is the actual brilliance of using Bitcoin. I've had talks with Secret Service before, and they want people to use Bitcoin because it's open. It's completely open. They've solved murder cases from years in the past through the use of Bitcoin because of your public addresses and stuff.
Who was murdering someone using Bitcoin?
Someone, it was I think it was in the Netherlands. The wife got mad at the ex-husband for cheating on her, paid someone Bitcoin. He went out and killed the husband, and then they backtracked it to her.
Because it's one similar code, right?
Yeah.
Like a dumb.
And the code never changes.
Well, it's not one similar code. It's public addresses. It's like a Gmail.
Okay.
And so that's forever public information. So you can see every transaction that's ever happened on the Bitcoin blockchain.
Okay, but can't these hackers though, can't people make secret identities and do that not get tracked?
Yeah. That happens all the time, but this is the exact same thing as how do most drug deals happen. I give you $20, you give me drugs. You give me guns, you give me ammo. It's the exact same thing. So it's kind of ironic that the government cares that much about Bitcoin when, in fact, you would want criminals to use Bitcoin. There was actually a $250 million hack on Bitfinex in 2016. They actually figured out who it was this past August. Wow. And they sent them to jail because they had all their money in Bitcoin and, you know, stupidly used addresses that were publicly tied to their name.
That means. So how about you, David? Before I go off, do you have any more questions, follow questions?
No, that was just it. That was the main thing.
So as a person right now, so, you know, I'm asking questions. Max and Chris are answering them. New person, I hit you up today to be on this podcast. You're like, Effie, I don't know anything about crypto. Do you still want me on? I'm like, yes, they actually do want you on because they want your questions. So when you're hearing all this stuff, are you getting scared away right now? What's your thought process of taking all this in for the past hour or so?
No, because I think it's right. Anything new that you do is intimidating, right? So at first it could be, but I think, you know, like you guys are saying, the future is heading to that digital. Everything's online, right? That's how the future is going to be. And if you're not ahead of the curve, you're behind it. So that's why I think, you know, it's good for people to learn about these things.
It's funny you bring that up because that's one of the points that kind of slipped away was you were saying, Touche, why would you keep your money on Fidelity, for example, right? But the thing I always tell people is pay attention to what the smart money is doing. There's no point in fighting against the grain. There's no point in fighting like what you see and what you believe in. Mm-hmm. Follow what the smart institutional money is doing. If Fidelity, a prestigious, creditable institution is investing into Bitcoin, there's something there, right? Yeah, that definitely. You need to, just like you said,
there's
get
that
ahead
old
of the
saying,
curve.
watch what they do, not what they say.
Yeah. And it's just
they
that.
know they're just like even the millionaires and billionaires, if they're doing it and if they're investing in this, there's something there.
Like,
you know?
I mean, whatever. Drake is a pop culture media guy, but he's been the past year alone just been doing stake, live Twitches, playing with Bitcoin, blah blah blah. And I'm just bringing up to that point that like there's a lot of characters that are starting to play and engage with the crypto market, and it's usually just through Bitcoin because that is the biggest asset, and it's easy. Whatever Drake is.
It was weird.
But long story short, exactly, just follow the smart money. I think doing your own research is the key, and I'm again, but for everyone listening too, like, you know, I know Effie has our Instagram handles there. Please feel free to reach out. I'm plugging ourselves in really quick.
Yeah, for sure.
We have a little smaller podcast that we just do audio podcasts on Spotify called Crypto City Pod. Chris and I, as well as we have a partner out in India who gracefully always joins us, and we just have like discussions just like this around topics that are happening in the market. Last night we had one about cold storage, so literally talking about this and what this means and what do you do and all that. So we go a little bit more in depth with that. But feel free to reach out to us, as well as Chris and I have held kind of like these bubbler sessions where we taught people just the basics of Bitcoin. And at the end of it all, we teach you how to transact in Bitcoin with like your Blue Wallet, your phone. So again, if there's any questions, please feel free to reach
in those
out.
sessions, I actually give people portions of a Bitcoin. Like I help them download their wallet, help them write down their seed phrase and how to properly store it, and I actually give them a portion of a Bitcoin.
Oh wow, that's dope.
I would love to. Let me know when the next one is. I'm down to.
Yeah.
Wait, so what is the current state now? So we talked about it. We got into a little bit what crypto is. You know, it's a little bit more definitions and things along those lines. But so right now, what is the current state? What do you guys think is happening? Would you guys still tell people like a David, hey, you should still invest your money into it? So I mean, is it time to get in? Should you wait?
I think this is if you are gonna get in, this is a good time to get in.
Not financial advice.
Not financial advice, right? Thank you, Chris. But because
all your money now.
Mortgage, everything, so everything drop is going to $1 million tomorrow.
Honestly, Kathy Wood said that yesterday.
2030.
By 2030, yeah, that's 5 years away, 7 years away. Bro, the way time has been flying, I'm sure like 2030 is right around the corner.
Yeah.
So because price is so low, and because this is so crypto for the past 10, 11 years has they go through cycle. And right now we're in a bear market. We're in something called crypto winter, right? Where you see the price goes down. This happened like 3 or 4 times already in the past like 10, 11 years. So this is normal to people like Chris and I, where us crypto enthusiasts saw our portfolio at its peak and just like drop. And, you know, I don't know if you guys know Reddit and what was going on with the GameStop thing, but there's a famous terminology called good diamond hands. Like you hold on to your assets no matter what the price is and whatever's going on with your portfolio. That's kind of what us crypto enthusiasts do now, especially if you believe in the technology. So if you're going to get in, obviously do your own research, but this is the best if this is just a great time to get.
So one of the things that I look at when I look at everything is I completely ignore price. And I think about what has fundamentally changed in Bitcoin and other projects that I like, for the good or for the bad. And then I look at the price action and I say, hey, does this reflect what's actually going on? And so when you look at things like FTX going to zero and BlockFi going to zero and Voyager going to zero and 3 Hours Capital, these are all crypto companies going to zero in the last 6 to 8 months. None of those things have anything to do with Bitcoin. So now if I'm telling you, if you buy milk and eggs and you usually spend $5 on milk and $3 on eggs, and I tell you tomorrow that, hey, you can go to the store and you can get 50 cents for milk and 25 cents for eggs, I guarantee you're going to stock up. So what's the difference? People look at investing as the exact opposite. When the price is going down, and a lot of people get scared. Whereas if you look at it, you know, and I think macro events have certainly helped, and I think that's the leading cause for why a lot of the prices have gone down. The biggest one is being the Fed. We were talking about how much money they actually printed. They're actually doing the opposite right now, where they're pulling money out of the system and trying to make dollars more scarce, to be able to combat inflation. And so I think that in itself has a little bit more ways to go. But I mean, in terms of what Bitcoin has changed in the last year, 4 years, 5 years, not really all that much. And so like, I personally dollar cost average. Dollar cost averaging means it doesn't matter the price, doesn't matter. You just pick a time period and you just buy it no matter what, the same exact dollar value. So it could be $100 a week, could be 100 every month, could be something like that. And that is generally, whether you're talking about Bitcoin, the stock market, that is pretty much historically the safest way to invest in your money, because you're never going to pick the bottom. You're never going to sell at the absolute bottom. You're never going to buy at the absolute. Please don't sell at the absolute bottom. But you're never going to buy the absolute bottom. You're never going to sell the absolute top. So just, you know, do your research, figure out what projects or assets. It doesn't have to be. This is not crypto related. Just you want blue chips assets that you believe in for the long term, and dollar cost average into them. And that's probably the safest way to be able to get into it. In addition to that, what I tell people is if you don't know anything about Bitcoin, you don't feel comfortable about Bitcoin, just make it a small portion of your portfolio. So if you have $100,000, don't put more than $500 to $3,000 worth into your portfolio. And now Bitcoin is an asset that has the ability to 5-6x in a matter of a year or so. And it's done that historically and in times a lot more. But on the flip side, if Bitcoin goes to another 50% correction and you only have, you know, 1,500 in your portfolio, who cares? It's only $700. It's not going to ruin your life. It's not going to change anything. Right. But that has the ability to be, you know, $10,000-$15,000 in a very short time.
Do you have a question, David? Seemed like you have a question coming up.
No, I'm just trying to process.
I was like you were coming ready for the mic.
I was just I was just looking. I was just processing everything. So it's true. What like kind of you say, Chris? Because it's kind of like stocks, but instead with stocks, it's just digital currency.
It moves similar to
people are buying now that everything's gone down and everything's low. Yep. Like instead of people were like, "Oh, I'm taking my money out," the smart people are like, "No, I'm buying more of it." I think that's
so. I think it makes it easier too if you have a longer time horizon. And if you look over many years, so Warren Buffett talks about this too. If you buy a house for $100,000, tomorrow it goes to $90,000, and someone offers you $90,000 to buy your house, you gonna sell them the house? No, you still need a place to live. Your family needs a place to live. It doesn't make any sense. You're looking for a 15, 20, 30 year period, and so a lot of these assets, you know, this is completely irrelevant of crypto. The next couple of years are very iffy at best. But over the long 5-year, 10-year period, things will likely go up due to how the dollar is created. Because no matter what, the government still can't get around the fact that in order to be able to create more GDP for our country, we need to be able to create more dollars. And what's everything priced in? Dollars. So as long as you keep, it's like a scale. The more dollars they create, the higher the asset value rise, and over the longer term.
Got it.
So someone like me, before I met and talked to you guys about crypto, I always thought you had to buy like one crypto coin, and I seen like the price. I'm like, what the hell? This shit's $97,000. How can I afford this? So someone like that, we haven't really gotten to the pricing of it yet. So if I download Robinhood or one of these apps where I can buy, Robinhood's still up, right?
Yeah.
So Robinhood's still up. I download Robinhood. What are you telling someone who's just someone like a David today's brand new, we threw him right into the water? Can be overwhelming. I'm sure as you right now, you're processing stuff. So what would you recommend someone like that? So you said $700. What does $700 get you? Like, what's your value on that?
So that was seven. I was
saying
so it would take a half a percent of your total portfolio to 3% is roughly what I tell people. And the reason there's a very mathematical calculation to be able to get to that number and why to do that number. It has a lot to do with the Sharpe ratio and the max drawdown and stuff. I'm not going to get into that, but there's been studies that have done on it where portfolios included with just a small portion of Bitcoin have the ability to increase your returns with lowering your risk. And so what I tell people is just take $50, $100 and just put it into Bitcoin. It doesn't matter how much you're getting. It doesn't matter if the asset goes to zero. And I tell that for people for running to get into the stock market. Like, it doesn't matter what you buy, because once you have a stake in it, you're going to be paying attention more to it, and you'll be seeing price movements. You'll be a little bit more comfortable with the volatility of it. And so Bitcoin is a highly volatile asset, but ironically, the second reserve currency in the world, the euro, has lost 30% of its value to the dollar in the last year. That shouldn't happen in any given year. Like, people, these are millions and hundreds of millions of people that are at stake, and it's lost just as much as Bitcoin. It's lost half as much as Bitcoin has compared to the dollar, which doesn't logically make any sense.
So really quick, I'm gonna try doing something really quick here on live. So if David, at the end, we tell him to download Strike, that's like the preferred, that we personally prefer. Bitcoin this morning, I think right now it's trading at like $16,400, but let's just call it, for simple math example's sake, let's $16,000. If you want to own one Bitcoin, you need 16 bands to buy one Bitcoin. Now, if you have $1,600, that's 10%, right? Following? Mm-hmm. If you want to own 1% of that Bitcoin, you put $160. So if he was to put $160 tonight, he would own 1% of a Bitcoin. Now, if that $16,000 Bitcoin in, let's say, 2 years reaches 100K, what's 1% of 100K? Right?
$1,000.
$1,000.
I was looking at him. I was like, you okay, bro?
Whoever wants to answer it.
I was looking at you, but that's all I was like, damn, is he okay?
Yeah.
$1,000, right? So today, what is today? November 23rd, 2022. You put in $160. When it hits 100K, now your account's sitting at 1,000. You just made, what is that? $840 investment. That's your capital gains. But now, if, like we were talking about selling this bottle, if we tell you, I'll sell you this bottle of water for 0.05, so half of 1%, you have Bitcoin to send to me. So in USD term, that's $80. But in Bitcoin's term, that's 0.05. No, 0.005. That's what's wrong there.
So actually, the smallest, to compare this to dollars, the smallest unit of account in dollars is a penny. The smallest unit of account in Bitcoin is a Satoshi. Technically speaking, there's no such thing as a Bitcoin. It's just a group of Satoshis that have been put together.
Oh,
and so,
shit, you guys just fucked me up.
So 100 million Satoshis is one Bitcoin. Yep. And so when you're actually buying, you're not buying a tenth of a Bitcoin or 1% of a Bitcoin. You're really buying X number of Satoshis. And so on 100 million, that's what, 100,000? a million. Yeah, it's 1 million. 1 million is 1%. So what you're buying 1 million Satoshis if you're buying that 1% of a Bitcoin. It's essentially the same thing. The reason that they decided to, or whoever decided to make it into 1 Bitcoin versus 100 million is because it's easier to numerize.
So you guys were saying, or you, Chris, was saying that you guys like to hold on to your stuff. Like you said, you're not going to sell it. So just for example, 401k, it has like a age you want to take it out.
Mm-hmm.
You don't hold on to it for your entire life. You know, you hit that age, you take it out, you spend it, whatever. So what's the end goal with buying a Bitcoin? Say if I had enough money to buy 1 Bitcoin, I spent 16,000, I buy the Bitcoin. At what's the end goal here? Am I
It's different for everybody. It's different for it could be, so it's the exact same thing as if you want to treat it like your stock account, you just want the dollar value to go up, that's fine. It could, some people buy it like a lot of gold investors, they're called gold bugs. They don't care about the price. They're just looking for the total number of ounces of gold that they can buy. That's fine as well. You could do a combination.
Yeah, and then let's say, so when we retire, 40, 50 years from now, right? What he was saying.
I don't know about you. I'm retiring before that.
Yeah, that's a long time for a
Well,
time.
I'm just saying when you could break into your 401k, right? That's what a lot of the rules are, right?
No, I'm just messing with you.
You were saying that the housing, when you buy a house, you have to show your Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
Who knows by that time that they will use your reserves of Bitcoins as like collateral. I mean, we kind of do now, but it's still very like wonky because the regulators are not, the laws are not there yet. But again, it's just see it as like gold. Like, why would you have, I'm trying to answer your question. Why would you keep it in your 401k? It's see it as a store of value, like a gold, or like Chris said, it depends on what you want to do. We can actively trade it, or not trade it, excuse me, actively transact between you and I with my Bitcoin, with your Bitcoin, or you can just store it and use it as a savings. Again, I try to tell people it's just digital money, but again, I say that with, a grain of salt, because there's more power to it, more technology to it.
Gotcha. So I asked this last time. We're gonna release that podcast at some point, but especially you being a realtor on the pod right now, I asked this last time, but ask it again. So say at 100,000 free money, I want to invest. What are you telling someone they come up to you, hey, Chris, I am interested in getting into real estate and I'm getting into crypto at the same time? Are you still saying that 3 to 5% plus, or does it change if you're trying to get into the real estate game?
So because I've had this conversation with clients, the number one thing you have to look for is the place for you and your family to live first. If you aren't feeling comfortable where you're living, then you need to be able to change that, regardless if it's renting or buying a place. The second thing is you can do each of those things together. Something that's really great of being an investor is you don't have to choose one thing over another. You can do both. And so if you have the ability to buy a house, then you're in a much stronger financial position, and you can do both. You can go out and put on, it's a $350,000 house, 3.5%. You're looking at about, $15,000. And then, that goes towards your house, but then hopefully that house is making you money. Hopefully you bought a multifamily and you're cash flowing every month and you're paying less on your mortgage than you are getting rent. You can then take that money and invest it into something more speculative, like stocks or cryptocurrencies or, gold and silver if you really, really want to. So I don't think when a lot of people are looking at like, well, what's this or that? And the best thing about being investors, you can choose everything. You can choose now when that's called diversification, and there's pluses and minuses with diversification. Because if your asset goes 10x, but your asset allocation in your portfolio is only 0.5%, you only gain 4.5% of your portfolio. It would have been better if you had more. But on the flip side, if it loses 50%, you only lost 0.25% of your portfolio versus, significantly more.
Gotcha. So after hearing all this, David, I know we're wrapping up. I know you guys got places to go. So David, as someone who's trying to level up all the time, I know that's what you're always trying to do, get into new things, how to make money, where to make money at. Hearing all this stuff from Chris and Max, how do you feel more about the Bitcoin game, crypto game now? Is it something you will get into? Or you still want to do more research? You want to get more into it with them?
Yeah, I think it's a good. I think you guys provided a good basis, like a good foundation. I think it's just growing on that and understanding it more. But what you said is true because like I have a multifamily right now, but you know interest rates are high, so I don't really like I'm not cash flowing yet, but I'm planning to by this year 2023. So when I do, it's like where do I put this additional income, right? So and it's true to like diversify. Like you don't want to put your eggs in one basket, they call it. So I think this is a good starting point.
Yeah, you know, and you guys can give like a quick excerpt. We get more into it in the podcast we did that's going to release sometime in the next coming weeks. But just so the people who are watching at this point, what got you guys like a quick story of what got you guys into crypto in the first place? You guys kind of go into your full winter story on the next podcast coming up. But just for those who are wondering what your basis and background is on crypto.
Well, it was quite funny. When I started Bitcoin, it was about in 2017. I just was a Forex trader, so just another form of stock trading or just intraday trading, using currencies, ironically. And to fund my account on the broker that I was using, I had to use Bitcoin. And that's how I got exposed to Bitcoin. And I just learned about putting my fiat into a wallet, buying some Bitcoin, then converting it, ramping up my my Forex account, and that's it. That's how I got exposed. And since then, I just fell through the rabbit hole, started learning about the technology. In grad school, fortunately, I was able to like do some fintech courses and like just kept learning, kept self-educating myself.
How about you, Chris?
So someone at work told me they made like $8,000 in a matter of a couple of weeks. I was like, shit, you got me sold.
That easy. That's how I got into it.
But in all seriousness, like I opened up the app. I was like, damn, Bitcoin's 9,000. I can't buy that. Damn, Ethereum's 500. Or 400. I don't really want to buy that. And I saw Litecoin. It was $70. I was like, all right, cool. I'll buy one of those. I knew absolutely nothing what I was doing. But over the next, to this day, I spend hours every day listening. Bitcoin talks about Bitcoin, talks about the technology, talks about other technologies in the space. I was actually in Colombia a couple months ago at a cryptocurrency conference. And so I was talking with like developers there and stuff. So I'm very, very active in the space. I used to work for a YouTube channel that created content, and I would write articles for them. I review projects for them. Mm-hmm. So I have a very long, solid base in understanding what this technology is.
Gotcha. Did we get into this last time? How'd you guys met? You guys kept saying to bring it up, but I don't think you brought it up.
So I knew a couple people that started a hedge fund in Rhode Island in crypto, and we had been talking for months and months. And one day, instead of me and them being on a call together that we usually had, Max was on the call, and I found out he liked soccer, and I knew he was Colombian, and so we just started talking. I had spent some time in Colombia, so we started talking in Spanish a little bit to each other, started talking about football, and found out he was really, really big into one of the projects I like. And so we just kept talking. Been cool.
We definitely did not go over that last time. I don't remember that story at all. I think we just went on a tangent and did not get to it.
Yeah.
So who's winning the World Cup?
That's tough. Honestly, we could talk about soccer for like another hour.
Only an hour?
Honestly,
that's how you guys met. Ended off perfect segue to end this off on the World Cup predictions.
Awesome. Yeah, World Cup just started 4 days ago. Crazy upsets. Japan upset of Germany today. Saudi Arabia beat Argentina, the favorites that a lot of people think Messi's gonna win it. I'm really interested to see what's happening tomorrow with Portugal and Brazil. They both play. Those two teams are top teams that we would like to see go far in the tournament.
You're betting your entire thing. Who you putting your money on?
Honestly,
tomorrow. That game that you're prepared for.
There's two teams I pray win it. It's either, Brazil or England. I have to root for England, just because a lot of the players on both those teams.
He's biased. He's been in London. I said you're biased. You lived in London.
Yeah, but I mean, I love London. But it's just there's a few players that are playing on my London-based soccer team that I love so much, London club. So. Yeah, either Brazil or England, honestly.
How about you, Chris?
So, if there's money on it, I'm going to say Brazil. But if it's my heart, I want to see Ronaldo win the World Cup.
Boo.
He's one of my favorite players. I love Cristiano. I want to see him get the title over Messi. He has the Euro. And unfortunately, Messi won the Copa America last year, so I want to see that Ronaldo has that title over him. I would want nothing more.
Not gonna lie here, but
The British accent.
Spain did really well.
Yeah, Spain had a good
Spain
game.
smacked the I mean, it's Costa Rica. No offense to Costa Rica,
But still 7-0.
But 7-0 is a
Yeah,
huge
7-0.
upset,
Yeah.
and they look tough. So, bro, honestly, you could tell. Like talking about soccer,
Oh,
I could talk
yeah.
all day on this mic.
Yeah.
So, David, you're not big into, you're not really a sports guy, right?
I watch it. Like I'm down to watch a game, but I'm kind of not into like the statistics and all of that. But
Do you even know who's playing? Could you say someone?
I'm going to Boston on Friday to watch England versus USA.
That's what's up.
Oh, fire.
Yeah. So like if it's like that, like I'm down. But
Who do you think got that? From what you know.
I wanna say USA because I'm American, but England I think got that.
Yeah, we'll see. USA play with a lot of heart, as we all do in every sport, but England is technically a little bit better. But we'll see.
Where you going there with?
Me, Zapata, Los.
Oh, nice,
Yeah.
nice. That's fine.
I don't even know how we found it, but they just put in the chat. They were like, "Oh, we got free tickets
Free tickets. Oh, nice.
to wherever they're doing it."
So, how do you guys feel? And Colombia not making it.
Oh no, I'm
Heartbroken?
I'm fucking heartbroken, honestly. But it's also like el técnico no sirve para nada. Like the coach was ass. The past year during the World Cup qualifying, we went 10 games where we didn't score a fucking goal. So as you can tell, I'm livid.
It's like
by
me talking about
Ellos
the
no
Doppler
querían jugar.
Celtics thing.
Ellos no querían jugar.
No, they don't. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
We have the players. We have great quality in the Colombian squad in the selección, pero we don't. Yeah, we just didn't score those 10 games, and that bit us in the ass. I think we were not Peru. Ecuador made in Peru, right? They made the last spot and so the way the World Cup works, South America has 10 teams. Only the top 5 make it. Colombia was like 1 point off the top 5. And so, but again, we couldn't score for shit. Like we just couldn't. So, and unfortunately, it's mad funny. Like there was a lot of people like on Twitter saying that they wish Colombia was in it because the fans are beautiful. Like the last time we were in 2014, like the way we danced at every
So it's a
goal,
vibe.
it was live. Like we bring energy. So unfortunate to know that our country's not in it or the country that we love. But hey,
So 2 of my 3 teams aren't in it. I'm American, but my team is Italy. For the second World Cup in a row, we did not make it.
I was just gonna ask you, since you're
that
half
hurts.
Colombian now, are you rooting for Colombia?
I do root for Colombia. I always Juan Cuadrado is one of my favorite players. My favorite soccer team is Juventus. So that's why I fell in love with him and his game. But it hurts to not see Italy there again, especially the way we did it after winning the Euro and then not being able to beat. When Jorginho missed that penalty against Switzerland, that was bad.
You can tell it's hurting your heart.
Yeah, dude, I was so pissed because like who wins the Euro and then doesn't make the World Cup? That doesn't make any sense. That's just another thing. So it's been tough for me to watch at the same time because I'm like, damn, my team should be there.
That's the worst.
And then I can't even watch Colombia either because they're not there either. So
you're gonna break Max's heart again.
Yeah.
So you going with Brazil? You going with Brazil too? Both Brazil?
I mean,
I like Neymar.
Or England? No, you're going to England.
no, I got Brazil and England, but again, you asked me a hard question because I'm waiting to see tomorrow's games because I want to see Brazil and Portugal play. Like I want to see every first game and then choose. But Spain looked amazing today.
So I will say there's only been one team in the history of the World Cup that's ever crossed the Atlantic and won the World Cup across the sea, and that was Germany in 2014. So a lot of these South American clubs, it'll be interesting to see if that holds up.
That's an interesting fact. That's definitely an interesting
Are
fact.
you watching?
Me, to be honest, I don't really watch. No, I'm down. I want to go when it comes to Gillette though. I want to go to like every like major sporting
Yeah, that's
event.
in
Like
4 years. That's honestly like
Pray that Italy and Colombia are there.
because Colombia has a chance, right, to make it to Gillette. No, to Gillette to play in Gillette.
So
though.
after the World Cup, everything starts all over again.
Yeah, but I know it's like seeding. It depends how like, they get
Where
they play.
That's not going to be determined for
another 3
3 years. at
Gotcha.
this
So
point.
this was
But
a chance.
to give us some hope, like our team is young. Like there's some young talent coming up.
Yeah,
We are aging. I'm sure you guys heard of James and Falcao, but like
Cuadrado.
they're dying out. But there's Ospina, the goalie. But
Locker room leaders. They'll be the locker room leaders.
yeah, and we have some good young players coming up. Yeah, let's hope, man. I mean, shit.
Yeah, let's hope we all go
That shit
together.
go
I'm definitely
crazy.
going. I'm down to go 100%.
Yeah,
So, yeah, David, any closing words with what's say a team to win it? Brazil?
I love Brazil, so I'll choose Brazil.
Yeah, I'm going Brazil too. Max seems confident about it, and so does Chris. So I'll go with Brazil.
My heart says Cristiano though.
And his heart says that. Might be heartbroken. But yeah, guys, I appreciate you guys coming through. Make sure you follow my guys, Crypto City Pod. Follow them on Spotify, on Twitter. They definitely get things together. It's a good support some local businesses. Get that information you need for crypto. Invest at $16,000 tomorrow. Now, that's my financial advice, not theirs. Yeah, David. So, how's your final thoughts on them, on the crypto podcast?
You said invest that 16,000. You're wilding. Nah. Thank y'all for being it. It was lit. I think the more you know, the less you need to find out. So just keep on trying to learn and stay connected to them. DM them if you have any questions. That podcast on that drive home. You know, we listen to music all the time, so just listen to something informative for a change.
Yeah, we wanted to thank you guys for allowing this to happen. Appreciate anyone on the live stream that has tuned in and listened on. Again, happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy time with your family. It's been a crazy year. So just be grateful for everything that has happened. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Chris or I, or Effie and David, and they could get us connected. But
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, one of the most frustrating things is to have people try to get into the space and they just go to people and places that know absolutely nothing of what they're actually talking about. Like they'll go to CNBC or they'll listen to the general news, and it's just like, no, that you can tell what they're trying to push forward, and a lot of it has to do with their fear of using the US dollar losing its value, when in reality what we really talk about is mostly how the technology works, and explaining that to people is a lot different. So thank you again, for letting us on.
You're welcome. I appreciate you guys coming on because I like to diversify myself. And, my podcast has a range of everybody. I have football players on. I've had you guys on. I've had things about, I've had John Bolano on, my real estate, John Bolano team, baby. Reach out to Chris if you need any realty, some real estate stuff. We definitely reach out to Chris and the Bolano team.
Well, it's my realtor too.
Yeah, he's with the Bolano team.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Reach out to them for real.
Yeah, because I always like networking. You never know who you're gonna meet. When I met you, it was over the summertime. You didn't know I had a podcast. I didn't know you were into crypto. People meet for, you never know who you're gonna meet for what reason. And if I can help you guys reach out to other people, and that's what I love about the podcast, having small businesses on, and getting the word out there for people.
Where did we meet?
We met at the pool and Last Resort.
That shit's so ass.
It was, but you never, like you said, you never know who you're gonna meet. I think maybe I met you to get into crypto.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, and exactly, Rhode Island is small, and just the world is smaller if you really think about it. And it's cool that we connect with like-minded people and just continue growing your network. Yeah,
you never know who you're gonna meet. Like I said, so I had two high school kids on Monday. They were celebrating winning the state football championship, and one thing I told them on the podcast was network. Don't be small-minded, because you never know. Don't close any doors, because that's how you're gonna continue to level up in this world. Just people like you guys who are trying to level up in this world, like David's trying to level up, and I think it's cool connecting all you guys, and that's one of my intentions with the podcast. Get my friends' words out there who are knowledgeable in spaces that I'm not knowledgeable in, and I'm glad you guys came in and been helping me get into the crypto world, because it's definitely opened my mind on this for sure. And like I said, I've learned a lot of things. You guys can learn more stuff. Make sure you follow them on Crypto City Pod on Spotify, Twitter, and thank you guys for your time, for tuning in. We'll definitely have more. Hope we try to get Chris on before he leaves to Colombia, and me and David and Max, I go visit you in Colombia, baby.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.